You think you understand alcohol. You think it just makes you feel relaxed, a little lighter, maybe even more social. But what if I told you that within minutes of your first sip, your body is already shifting into a completely different survival mode? A mode where almost every system inside you starts working harder just to deal with what you've introduced into it. And the truth is, most people have no idea what's actually happening beneath the surface while they're laughing, talking, and enjoying that drink. Because alcohol doesn't just sit in your body. It doesn't behave like food. It doesn't nourish you. It's treated as a toxin. And your body immediately prioritizes getting rid of it over almost everything else. The moment alcohol enters your bloodstream, your liver jumps into action. And here's where it gets interesting. Your liver has one main job at that moment: detoxification, which means everything else gets put on hold. Fat burning slows down, digestion changes, blood sugar regulation gets disrupted, all because your body is now focused on clearing alcohol out as quickly as possible. And this is where a lot of people unknowingly sabotage their health goals, especially fat loss. Because while alcohol is being processed, your body literally stops burning fat efficiently. So if you're drinking regularly and wondering why progress feels slow, this could be a huge piece of the puzzle. But let's go deeper, because what happens in your brain is even more fascinating. Within minutes, alcohol begins altering your neurotransmitters. These are the chemical messengers that control how you feel, think, and behave. One of the first effects is on GABA, a calming neurotransmitter. Alcohol increases its activity, which is why you start to feel relaxed, less anxious, more at ease. But at the same time, it suppresses glutamate, which is responsible for alertness and brain activity. So your thinking slows down, your reaction time drops, and your judgment starts to shift. That's why people say or do things they normally wouldn't. It's not just letting loose. It's actual chemical changes in the brain, reducing your ability to think clearly. And then there's dopamine, the reward chemical. Alcohol triggers its release, giving you that temporary feel-good sensation. But here's the catch. Your brain remembers that. And over time, it starts associating alcohol with pleasure, which is one of the reasons it can become habit-forming without you even realizing it. Now let's talk about something most people overlook: your sleep. A lot of people think alcohol helps them sleep better. And in the beginning, it might feel that way, because it can make you fall asleep faster. But the quality of that sleep is completely different. Alcohol disrupts your REM sleep, the stage where your brain processes emotions, consolidates memory, and recovers mentally. So even if you sleep for 7 or 8 hours, you wake up feeling tired, foggy, and not fully rested. And this has a ripple effect, because poor sleep affects your hormones, especially the ones that control hunger and cravings. Ghrelin goes up, leptin goes down, meaning you feel hungrier and less satisfied, which is why after a night of drinking, you crave more junk food, more sugar, more carbs. It's not just lack of willpower. Your body is literally pushing you in that direction. Now let's shift to your metabolism, because alcohol is surprisingly calorie-dense, about 7 calories per gram, almost as much as fat. But unlike nutrients, these are empty calories. They don't provide vitamins, minerals, or anything your body actually needs. And here's the key point. Your body cannot store alcohol, so it has to deal with it immediately, which means everything else, including fat and carbs, gets stored instead of burned. So imagine this. You have a meal, maybe something high in carbs or fat, and you add alcohol on top of it. Your body prioritizes burning the alcohol, and the rest gets pushed into storage. Over time, this contributes to weight gain, especially around the abdomen. That's why you often hear about belly fat being linked to alcohol. It's not just the calories, it's the way your metabolism shifts in response to it. Now let's talk about your liver in more detail, because this is where the real long-term impact happens. Your liver processes alcohol through enzymes, primarily alcohol dehydrogenase, converting it into acetaldehyde, which is actually more toxic than alcohol itself. This substance can damage cells, proteins, and DNA. Normally, your body quickly converts acetaldehyde into a less harmful compound. But when alcohol intake is high or frequent, this system gets overwhelmed, leading to inflammation and damage over time. This is how conditions like fatty liver begin, where fat accumulates inside liver cells. And if this continues, it can progress to more serious issues like fibrosis or cirrhosis. And here's the scary part. In the early stages, there are often no obvious symptoms, so people don't realize what's happening until significant damage has already occurred. But alcohol doesn't just affect your liver, it impacts your entire digestive system. It irritates the lining of your stomach, increasing acid production, which can lead to discomfort, bloating, and even gastritis over time. It also affects how nutrients are absorbed, especially important ones like vitamin B12, magnesium, and zinc. So even if you're eating well, regular alcohol consumption can quietly create deficiencies in your body. And then there's your immune system, something we don't think about often when it comes to alcohol. Even moderate drinking can weaken your immune response, making it harder for your body to fight off infections. Your white blood cells become less effective, inflammation increases, and recovery slows down. Which is why people who drink frequently often notice they get sick more easily or take longer to recover. Now let's talk about hormones, because this is another hidden area where alcohol has a big impact. In men, alcohol can lower testosterone levels, which affects muscle growth, energy levels, and even mood. In women, it can disrupt estrogen balance, which plays a role in metabolism, mood, and overall health. And across both, alcohol increases cortisol, the stress hormone, which promotes fat storage, especially in the abdominal area, and contributes to that wired but tired feeling. So even though alcohol might feel relaxing in the moment, internally, it's actually creating a stress response in your body. And if you're someone who works out regularly or is trying to build strength, this matters even more. Alcohol interferes with muscle protein synthesis, the process your body uses to repair and build muscle after exercise. So even if you're training hard, drinking can slow down your progress significantly. It also affects hydration. Alcohol is a diuretic, meaning it increases fluid loss, which can lead to dehydration, impacting your performance, recovery, and even how your body feels the next day. And this is why workouts after a night of drinking often feel harder. Your body is not in an optimal state to perform. Now let's go back to your brain for a moment, because the long-term effects here are just as important. Over time, repeated alcohol exposure can change the structure and function of your brain, especially areas involved in memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. This is why heavy or consistent drinking can lead to issues with concentration, memory lapses, and mood swings. And even in the short term, think about how your focus, coordination, and reaction time change after drinking. That's your brain being directly affected. Now here's something a lot of people don't realize. Your tolerance to alcohol doesn't mean it's affecting you less. It just means your brain has adapted, requiring more alcohol to produce the same effect. But the internal damage, the impact on your liver, your hormones, your sleep, that's still happening. So building tolerance is not a sign of strength. It's actually a sign your body is adjusting to repeated exposure. And this is where awareness becomes powerful, because when you understand what's really happening, you start making more intentional choices. This isn't about telling you to completely eliminate alcohol. It's about understanding the trade-offs, knowing what your body goes through, so you can decide what aligns with your goals. Because for some people, occasional drinking might not have a major impact, but for others, especially if you're trying to improve your health, lose weight, build muscle, or boost energy, even small habits can add up. And one of the biggest shifts happens when you start noticing how you feel after drinking, not just in the moment, but the next day, your energy, your mood, your focus, your cravings. Because your body always gives feedback. We just don't always pay attention to it. So next time you pick up a drink, just remember, within minutes your body is already working hard to process it. Your liver is prioritizing detoxification. Your brain chemistry is shifting, your sleep quality is being affected, your metabolism is changing. And when you see the full picture, it becomes easier to make choices that support the version of yourself you're trying to build. Because at the end of the day, it's not about perfection, it's about awareness. And once you have that, everything else starts to change. And this is where things start to go even deeper. Because beyond the physical effects we've talked about, alcohol has a powerful and often underestimated connection to your mental health. And not in the way most people assume. At first, alcohol feels like relief, like an escape, like something that helps you switch off the noise in your head. And that's exactly why so many people turn to it after a long, stressful day. It creates a temporary sense of calm, a break from anxiety, overthinking, or emotional pressure. But what's actually happening inside your brain tells a very different story. When alcohol boosts that calming neurotransmitter activity, it gives you that relaxed feeling. But your brain is always trying to maintain balance, so in response, it starts adjusting its chemistry to compensate. It reduces its natural calming signals and increases the ones that create alertness and stress. So when the alcohol wears off, you don't just return to your normal state, you swing in the opposite direction. This is why people often feel more anxious, more restless, or even low the next day. It's not random. It's your brain reacting to the imbalance that alcohol created. And over time, if this pattern repeats, that temporary relief starts turning into a cycle. You feel stressed or anxious. You drink to relax. Your brain compensates. The alcohol leaves your system, and now your baseline anxiety is actually higher than before, so you feel the need to drink again. And this is how dependence can quietly begin, not necessarily in a dramatic way, but in a gradual, almost invisible loop that builds over time. Now think about this in the context of anxiety disorders. Alcohol might seem like it helps in the moment, especially in social situations. It lowers inhibitions, reduces self-consciousness, makes interactions feel easier. But underneath that, it's interfering with the brain's ability to regulate anxiety naturally. So instead of learning how to manage stress or social discomfort in a healthy way, the brain starts relying on alcohol as the shortcut. And the more this happens, the less confident you feel without it. Which is why some people begin to feel like they need a drink to be themselves, to speak freely, to feel comfortable in their own skin. But that confidence isn't real. It's chemically induced. And when it fades, it often leaves behind even more self-doubt than before. Now let's talk about depression, because this is another area where alcohol plays a significant role. Alcohol is a depressant, not just in the sense of mood, but in how it slows down brain activity. And while it might create short bursts of pleasure through dopamine release, the overall effect on your brain chemistry is actually suppressive. Over time, frequent alcohol use can reduce your brain's ability to produce and regulate mood-related neurotransmitters, like serotonin. And this is where things become concerning, because low serotonin levels are strongly linked to feelings of sadness, lack of motivation, and emotional numbness. So what starts as something you use to feel better can gradually contribute to feeling worse on a deeper level. And this effect is often subtle at first. Maybe you notice you're less motivated. Maybe your mood feels a bit flatter. Maybe things that used to excite you don't feel the same anymore. It's easy to overlook these changes or blame them on stress, routine, or life circumstances. But alcohol can be playing a hidden role in that shift. And then there's the emotional side of things. Because alcohol doesn't just change your brain chemistry, it also lowers your ability to regulate emotions. That means feelings can become more intense, more reactive, and harder to control. You might notice that arguments escalate more quickly, that small issues feel bigger than they are, that sadness or frustration hits harder than usual. And this is because the part of your brain responsible for control and reasoning is being suppressed, while the emotional centers become more active. So instead of responding to situations with clarity, reactions become more impulsive, more driven by immediate feelings. This can strain relationships, create misunderstandings, and lead to decisions that you might not make otherwise. And when you wake up the next day, there's often regret, confusion, sometimes even guilt, which adds another layer to the mental burden. Now consider how this ties into stress. Many people use alcohol as a way to cope with stress, to unwind, to take the edge off. But physiologically, alcohol actually increases stress in the body. It raises cortisol levels, disrupts sleep, and creates that rebound effect we talked about earlier. So even though it feels like you're reducing stress in the moment, you're actually increasing your overall stress load over time. And this creates a situation where your baseline becomes more tense, more reactive, which again feeds back into that cycle of needing relief. Now let's talk about something that's rarely discussed: the impact of alcohol on emotional resilience. Your brain is constantly adapting based on how you respond to challenges. When you face stress, discomfort, or difficult emotions and work through them, your brain builds resilience. But when alcohol becomes the go-to response, that process gets interrupted. Instead of learning how to handle discomfort, you're avoiding it. And over time, this can make you more sensitive to stress, not less. So situations that might have been manageable before start to feel overwhelming. Not because they've changed, but because your capacity to handle them has been reduced. And this is one of the most important things to understand. Alcohol doesn't just affect how you feel in the moment. It shapes how your brain responds to life over time. Now think about motivation and focus. Alcohol affects the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and goal-directed behavior. When this area is consistently disrupted, it becomes harder to stay focused, harder to follow through, harder to maintain discipline. You might find yourself procrastinating more, struggling to stay consistent with habits, feeling less driven overall. And again, this doesn't happen overnight. It builds gradually, which is why it can be difficult to connect the dots. You just feel like your energy is lower, your clarity isn't the same, your motivation is off. But alcohol could be one of the factors contributing to that shift. Now let's go even deeper into the long-term effects. Chronic alcohol use has been linked to changes in brain structure, particularly in areas related to memory and emotional processing. This can lead to difficulties with recall, learning, and even emotional regulation. And while these changes are more pronounced with heavy use, even moderate, consistent drinking can have subtle effects over time. Now consider the social aspect. Alcohol is often tied to social experiences, celebrations, gatherings, relaxation, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when it becomes the central way you connect, unwind, or cope, it can limit your ability to experience those things without it. You might feel like social situations are less enjoyable without alcohol, like something is missing, and that perception can slowly reshape your habits and preferences. Now imagine stepping back for a moment and observing the pattern. A drink to relax, followed by poorer sleep, followed by lower energy, increased cravings, reduced focus, slightly elevated anxiety, and then another drink to cope with that feeling. It's a loop that feeds itself, and the more it repeats, the more it becomes normalized. But once you start recognizing it, you can begin to break it, because awareness is the first step toward change. And that doesn't mean eliminating alcohol completely. It means understanding its effects well enough to make conscious choices. Maybe that means reducing frequency. Maybe it means being more intentional about when and why you drink. Maybe it means noticing how different amounts affect your mood, your sleep, your energy, because your body is always communicating with you. And when it comes to mental health, those signals matter even more. So the next time you think about alcohol as a way to feel better, just remember, the relief it provides is temporary, but the impact on your brain can last much longer. And the more you understand that connection, the more control you have over how you feel, not just in the moment, but in the long run. And this is where we need to look at something even more serious. Because while a lot of people focus on the liver or the brain, alcohol is constantly interacting with one of the most critical systems in your body, your heart and your blood vessels. And the effects here are not always obvious in the moment, but they build quietly over time. The moment alcohol enters your bloodstream, it doesn't just stay in one place. It circulates through your entire vascular system, affecting how your blood flows, how your vessels respond, and how your heart functions under pressure. In the short term, alcohol can actually cause your blood vessels to relax and widen. This is called vasodilation, and it's one of the reasons some people feel warm or flushed after drinking. It can even create the illusion that your body is more relaxed. But here's the important part. This effect is temporary, because as your body continues to process alcohol, the opposite starts to happen. Your nervous system becomes more activated, stress hormones begin to rise, and your blood vessels can start to constrict instead. So instead of a stable, balanced system, your cardiovascular system is being pushed back and forth between relaxation and stress. And over time, this repeated fluctuation begins to strain the system. Now let's talk about blood pressure specifically, because this is where alcohol has a very direct and measurable impact. Even a single drinking session can cause a temporary increase in blood pressure, and if drinking becomes frequent, those temporary spikes can turn into a consistent pattern. This happens for several reasons. Alcohol stimulates the release of stress hormones like adrenaline, which increases heart rate and causes blood vessels to tighten. At the same time, it interferes with the signals your body uses to regulate fluid balance. So your body may start retaining more sodium and water, increasing the volume of blood in your circulation, which puts additional pressure on your vessel walls. And when this happens repeatedly, your baseline blood pressure can begin to rise. This is how long-term alcohol use becomes a risk factor for hypertension or chronically high blood pressure. And the tricky part is, high blood pressure often doesn't come with clear symptoms early on. You don't necessarily feel it happening, but inside your body, your heart is working harder with every beat, pushing against increased resistance in your blood vessels. Now think about what that means over time. Your heart is a muscle, and like any muscle, when it has to work harder consistently, it starts to change. The walls of the heart can thicken, particularly the left ventricle, which is responsible for pumping blood to the rest of your body. At first, this might sound like a form of adaptation, but it's not a healthy one, because as the heart muscle thickens, it can become less flexible, less efficient at filling and pumping blood properly. and this can eventually lead to conditions like left ventricular hypertrophy, where the heart struggles to function optimally. Now, let's go even deeper into how alcohol affects heart rhythm. Your heart relies on a precise electrical system to maintain a steady, coordinated beat. Alcohol can disrupt this system, especially when consumed in larger amounts. You might have heard of something called holiday heart syndrome, where people experience irregular heart rhythms after episodes of heavy drinking. This can feel like your heart is racing, skipping beats, or fluttering. And while it can sometimes resolve on its own, repeated disruptions to heart rhythm can increase the risk of more serious arrhythmias over time, because the electrical stability of your heart is being challenged again and again. Now combine this with the effects on blood pressure, increased strain on the heart muscle, and changes in vessel function, and you start to see how alcohol creates a multi-layered impact on cardiovascular health. But it doesn't stop there. Alcohol also affects the lining of your blood vessels, something called the endothelium. This inner lining plays a crucial role in regulating blood flow, controlling when vessels widen or constrict, and maintaining overall vascular health. When alcohol is consumed regularly, it can damage this lining, reducing its ability to function properly. This leads to something known as endothelial dysfunction, and when that happens, your blood vessels lose some of their flexibility. They become less responsive, less able to adapt to changes in blood flow and pressure. This contributes not only to high blood pressure, but also to the early stages of atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaques in your arteries. Now imagine this process over years. Your vessels become stiffer, your blood pressure remains elevated, your heart works harder, and small amounts of damage begin to accumulate. This is how the risk of serious cardiovascular events increases, things like heart attacks and strokes. And again, this doesn't usually happen suddenly. It develops gradually, often without noticeable warning signs. Now let's talk about cholesterol, because alcohol has a complex relationship with it. You might have heard that moderate alcohol consumption can increase HDL, the so-called good cholesterol. And while that can be true in some cases, it's only part of the picture, because alcohol can also increase triglycerides, a type of fat in your blood that, when elevated, contributes to cardiovascular risk. High triglycerides combined with other factors like poor diet, lack of exercise, or genetic predisposition can significantly increase the strain on your cardiovascular system. So focusing only on one potential benefit while ignoring the broader impact can be misleading. Now consider how alcohol affects your body during sleep, because this connects directly to heart health as well. When your sleep is disrupted, especially the deep and restorative stages, your cardiovascular system doesn't get the recovery time it needs. Your heart rate may remain elevated, your blood pressure may not drop as it normally would during sleep, and your stress hormones can stay higher than usual. Over time, this lack of proper recovery contributes to increased cardiovascular strain. And this is one of the hidden ways alcohol impacts your heart, not just through direct effects, but by interfering with the processes that keep your system balanced. Now let's bring this into a real-life perspective. Think about someone who drinks regularly, maybe not excessively, but consistently, a few times a week, maybe more on weekends. Each time, there's a temporary increase in blood pressure, a disruption in heart rhythm, a shift in vessel function, a hit to sleep quality. Individually, these might seem small, manageable, easy to ignore, but when they repeat over months and years, they compound. And this is where long-term risk begins to build. Now here's something important to understand. Your cardiovascular system is incredibly adaptive. It can recover, it can improve, but only when it's given the right conditions, which means the choices you make consistently have a powerful impact. Reducing alcohol intake, improving sleep, staying active, managing stress, these are all factors that support heart health. But if alcohol is constantly introducing stress into the system, it becomes harder for your body to maintain that balance. And this is why awareness matters so much. Because when you understand how alcohol is affecting your heart and your blood pressure, you start to see the bigger picture. It's not just about how you feel in the moment. It's about what's happening inside your body over time. And once you start paying attention to that, your decisions naturally begin to shift. You start noticing patterns, how your heart feels after drinking, how your energy changes, how your body responds the next day. And that awareness gives you the ability to make choices that align with your long-term health, instead of just short-term comfort.